All right, boys, 2007 Corolla. Customer complaint is the gauge fuse keeps blowing. It's a 10 amp gauge fuse. Let me show you where it's located at. It's actually under the dash. Here's the fuse box. And it's basically on the third row from this side. It's the one closest to the front here. Should be a 10 amp, I believe. Anyway, that gauge fuse says it's like for the cluster. You'll think it's for the gauge, but that thing is for a lot of different things. I don't know why they would even do it like that. Why not add more fuses and break it out differently? Anyway, the main thing culprit that would cause something like this is your reverse lights, because it's for your backup lights. And also, another common point of failure is the alternator. So first thing to do, disconnect your reverse lights. This right here is pretty handy. It disconnects the entire light socket. And also you want to inspect your wiring, make sure you don't have anything damaged, pinched that could be causing a ground. So you just unplug it on both sides like this, change that fuse and see if the problem goes away. If it goes away, you know you got a blown light socket or something like that you need to swap out. After you've done that, you want to come to your alternator. What I'm doing here on this car, disconnect it, unplug it, and try it again, see if the fuse blows. If the fuse does not blow, then you know it's your alternator that was bad. You need to replace your alternator. Now, if you're still getting the fuse blowing, like what's happening in this case, now it's even worse, because this one blows as soon as you put the key in and you turn the ignition on, boom, it blows the fuse right away. So there's something shorted to ground. Now, to find out what else it could be, there's a lot of things on that gauge fuse, like the courtesy lamps, like on your roof, the door locks, the transmission. I believe the neutral safety switch is on there, which I'm starting to feel like that's what's going to be on this car. So I'm troubleshooting this right now. Here's how you're going to find out if it's probably going to be something in the front of the car, if you get this far, if it's not something simple. You come under here, and there's one plugged in here. You see this white connector here plugged in? You unplug that. See if the fuse blows. Let's see if I can get you a better look at it. It's hard to see. And it should not blow. If it does, try and plug in a gray one next to it, and it should not blow. Right now, with this white connector plugged in, it blows the fuse. If I unplug that white connector right there, the fuse will not blow. So it has nothing to do with the gray connector. So I'm gonna have to test the outputs or see which one of these wires here have a hard ground on them right now, and that's how I'm gonna find out which circuit is shorted. Okay, I'm going ahead and replace that fuse, and let's see. I disconnected the instead of testing out the wires, I disconnected the neutral safety switch, and I'm gonna turn the light off, so if it blows, you're gonna see that sucker pop. Let me put the key in. All right, boys, look for a flash. Saw that? It blew. So it is not at this point the neutral safety switch. The speed sensor is also on that circuit, so I got to disconnect that. Also, there's something else that's on it. This is the integration relay. Your fuse box is going to look different because this actually sits right there like that, plugged in. This connects up to the fuse box, and this goes to the output. I disconnected this as well, and there's also a flasher relay right here. I've got it disconnected. That's also on that circuit. So there's a lot of things on this stupid circuit, man. It's really dumb. Here we are at the front of the car, and there unplugged is the neutral safety switch, and the fuse still blew. So now I got to find where the speed sensor is on this thing and unplug that. Fun, man. The velocidad, right? Here's the speed sensor connector. It sits. See if you can see that. Sits right there in the back of the transmission. Unplugged it. Let's see. Just put in another fuse. Hope for no flash, boys. 1, 2, 3. Oh, boys, we're good. We're good, boy. It was a bad speed sensor that was blowing the gauge fuse. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? Oh my God. this sucker, I've been on this for about at least more than an hour. Unplugging, finding everything on this stupid circuit. Man, hit that thumbs up button, boys. All right, we got our neutral safety switch plugged back in. We're gonna plug in the alternator. This car was supposedly driving, cut off, alternator stopped charging. As you can see, they put a brand new alternator, brand new a lot of stuff, and still had the same problem. It's blowing a fuse, not charging. So that's how I ended up getting called out to do a diagnosis on this. There we go. Now it should start, should charge everything. All right. Get the key on the flasher. That's already a good sign because that would blow right there. You wouldn't have any flashes. There it is. Boys, the fuse blew again. Now, isn't that crazy? Okay, we found the problem. The fuse stopped blowing. We were able to leave the blinker on and everything, right? And now it blows again instantly once you put the fuse back in. So here's what I'm thinking. I plugged the alternator back in. The speed sensor was not plugged in, right? And the fuse blew. And now it blows instantly when I turn the key on. So I'm going to unplug the alternator again because that circuit from the speed sensor and the alternator it pretty much shares the same line, I believe, from the diagram if you've seen it. And it could be that once I plugged in the alternator, it got shorted out, grounded out like that. So that cable that goes to the speed sensor and the alternator, I might, if I cannot find it, it's somewhere in the wire harness, there's some damage. The easiest solution might be to just run an external wire to bridge those two together and be done with it. Depends on what the customer wants to do, right? We can kind of follow the harness and see if we find it. But that, to me, looks like what the problem is going to be. So let me change the fuse and unplug the alternator and let's see if it still blows. Plug this thing again. There, it's out. Looks kind of nasty, huh? Okay. Okay, boys, fingers crossed. When I turn the ignition on, I'm gonna put the flasher on. It's on. That thing stays flashing. Okay, so my theory, I believe, is right. So that means if I go plug in that alternator right now, it should blow. Which I don't feel like doing because I know it just blew when I had it plugged in. So that circuit. So I believe this red and white wire is the power right there coming from the gauge fuse, and it should be the same one there on the speed sensor socket. So what I'm thinking of doing, let's see. I mean, this is an old car. I don't see any obvious signs of damage. I kind of looked around on the wire harness, felt this feels all good. The tape is really well, but who knows what's under, right? So it would have to, the damage would have to be from here going to there, and of course it would bridge off here, I'm assuming, to make it to that sensor. Because I was thinking, okay, could it be that the alternator's bad? I don't think so, because for one, they just changed it. Doesn't mean it's bad. It's an aftermarket part. Doesn't mean it's not bad, rather. And two, when I had it unplugged and that plugged in, the fuse blew, right? Unplugging that and unplugging this together stops the fuse from blowing, right? So with either one of these plugged in, the fuse will blow. The chance that both of these are bad that's causing that, I think, are low. So I think the most likely culprit is going to be the wiring, and somehow once it gets plugged in, it's catching the ground some kind of a way. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to test this wire and see if I get any ground on that red wire. Test light on battery positive, right? You see the plus. Middle connector, which is the red. Look at that. We got a ground. Same thing on the other connector, exact same light, and you could even hear a relay click. Middle, en el medio. battery. See, in it, Hey, see that? Guys, I tested and I've got a ground on all three of these. They're all disconnected. The alternator, the red and white has a ground. The red and white on the neutral safety switch has a ground. And also, of course, the speed sensor. So what I've got to do is find that wire inside, because a customer decided that he wants to go the cheap route. They don't want to replace the wire harness for this car, maybe in the future. So I'm going to eliminate the wire on the inside of the car here, that junction block, and then I'm going to run a new wire to supply these three with a 10 amp fuse right here at the battery. And that should do that for this one, because if I do not eliminate it in there, that ground at some point can always spike back and blow that fuse. Even though these things will still operate, that fuse will be constantly blowing still if that ground makes it back, because it's not necessarily these devices, but the line itself has a ground on it. So I got to find that in there. It should be red and white. So let's see. Thinking like, I'm wondering if it could be, I'm seeing that ground I'm seeing is being backfed from something else on the circuit, which could very well be that's what I'm seeing right here, and it might not necessarily be a hard ground in this line. Very strange, man. Because when you think about it, if I have these two unplugged, the neutral safety switch plugged in, why wouldn't the fuse blow, right? As soon as I plug this one in, it blows the fuse. Very strange. I went ahead with an external wire from the speed sensor and from the alternator. It goes fused to the battery right here. I'm going to go ahead and put an eyelet on it, and that's going to be it for this one. Customer elected to save some money and do it like this instead of going through the wire harness. We're just going to put that eyelet on there, put it on there permanently, clean everything up, tie up the wires, and that's a fix on this one, boys. Click that thumbs up button, like and subscribe. See you guys on the next one. There it is, signal lights on, working. If you haven't seen my guide on automotive best practices, wire crimping and everything wiring, click the link in the description. I'm going to have it on there. Very good guide on all this stuff. Take off the glove box. You've got easy access.